So now I only have $300 and something left, and then I have the rent for the next month. And I'm like walking around my house and I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out in my apartment, and I'm just like, oh my God, you're the one that told me to move here, you know? Welcome back. God bless everyone. God bless everyone that sees this video. Anyways, I want to talk about trusting God when it doesn't make sense. So, trusting God when it doesn't make sense. And Lord knows I've been there plenty of times, but I just have to trust God, you know, that whenever He instructs, He's going to provide, pretty much. Okay, so when I got to Texas, I had settled into my apartment and I didn't have a job, y'all. Settled in, still don't have a job, right? I was in New York. Prior to moving out here, I was in New York, and I was trying to find jobs out there before I arrived here, so that way I can have something lined up, you know, and feel some sort of a cushion. But this was, I'm telling you, when God is testing your faith, He will allow certain things just to let you know that He is God. Anyway, so I get here. I don't have anything lined up. And I remember that I had $300 left, right, out of my savings that I had to like come here. I came here. First of all, like I saved up my coins, okay, to make this move. So now I only have $300 and something left, and then I have the rent for the next month. And I'm like walking around my house and I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out in my apartment, and I'm just like, oh my God, you're the one that told me to move here. You're the one who told me to move here. I don't have a job. I don't know what's going on. And so I remember I called my dad. Now I'm calling my dad not to ask for help, right? I'm calling my dad because my dad, he knows how to tap into the spirit, right? So I needed somebody to give me a word of hope or something. And so I called my dad. I'm like, Dad, you know, I'm out here and I only have $300 and something on the side to spend, and I only have, on top of that, I only have the rent for next month. And I guess he heard it in my voice that I was freaking out. And he's like, wasn't you that said that God, you know, wasn't you that said that God told you to go out there? But it wasn't him questioning me. It was him giving me the reassurance, right? And I said, yes. And he chuckled, right? So, and I know when my dad chuckles, like that chuckle was of the spirit. My dad has had experiences with the Lord. And he chuckled and he's like, Janiris, God can do anything. And when he said that, something leaped in my spirit. I was like, amen. Like I received that. I really did. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to trust God, this, that, and third, right? After I hung up with him, a few days later, I take my resumes with me, because that's one thing I did in New York. I printed out a whole bunch of resumes. And I said, I'm just going to keep this here, you know, just in case. I kept it in a folder. I took my resumes with me and I went around the area and the circling areas as well. And I started just, you know, going to every place and just dropping off my resume. Long story short, right? One of the places in which I dropped off my resume, the chef took it. The chef took the resume. He told me that the manager wasn't there and he wasn't going to be there until later. So I said, okay, cool. So then I'll come back later and I'll talk to the manager. And so I just waited a couple of hours and I came back, spoke to the manager, really cool dude. And he sees that, you know, I'm from New York, and we start talking a little bit, and he says to me, I'm going to forward your resume over to the corporate office. Now, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, right. You're going to throw that resume away. Because, you know, like when people say things like that, you don't really take it for what it is. You're just kind of like, hey, whatever, you know. Long story short, guys, I get a call. I believe it was the next day. If not, it was, you know, a couple days later. I get a call from the corporate office, and it's the secretary, and she asked, you know, to meet. She asked me. She was coordinating the appointment in order for me to meet with the owner of the establishments. And so I said, okay, cool. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, like this is, fast forward. I go into the office. I meet with the owner. And one thing that was just mind-blowing, right? He, just even thinking about this, it's like, what, God, you know? Okay, so he is kind of like, first he welcomes me to the office, and it was his birthday that day too. So I said, oh, happy birthday, you know, this, that, and third. And he was very nice, very friendly, very friendly. He has this smirk on his face, right? As if he's really, really happy to see me. And I'm just confused. I'm like, okay, like why? What's going on here, right? And he's holding up my resume, and he's like reading through the resume, reading through the places that I've worked in. And I'm confirming, like, yeah, I've worked there. Yeah, you know. And then he places the resume down, and he's smirking. He's like, I know all of the owners and all of the corporate executives that, you know, that work in those establishments. And I was like I was floored. I can't lie, I was floored. And then he tells me that he had businesses out in New York, and that he lived in New York for many years, and he ran those businesses before he sold it off and, you know, moved to Texas. And so I was thinking to myself, this is crazy. So he starts naming people in, you know, in corporate. He starts naming owners, and I'm here like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, bruh, this is nuts. This is nothing but a God thing. And so next thing you know, like we're talking just about my experience. We're talking about New York City. We're talking about Texas. It was a great interviewing process. And so next thing you know, he calls the restaurant in which they're seeking for a manager, right? So they call the restaurant, and immediately an appointment was set up for me to, you know, meet up with the general manager over at that restaurant at that location. Okay, y'all. So here's the tricky part. So I leave the interview, right? And y'all are gonna call me ungrateful, but I was like, nah, God. No. You said new beginning, right? I was like, you said new beginning. Why do I have to? Because I know in my heart of hearts, that that is where he wanted me to go. I just knew it. I knew I was going to get hired. I just knew it, right? And so here I am, the audacity, going back and forth, or really not even back and forth, it's just me, telling God, I'm like, God, you know, you can do anything. I'm sure you can like pave a different way. You said new beginning. New beginning means a fresh, like new. But I didn't know what he was up to, right? And so I go back home, and I remember that night I said a prayer. I said, God, if this is really you, mind you, I already know, but confirmation is key. This is what I always say, and what I will continue to say in my videos is confirmation is definitely key, okay? Never be afraid to ask for confirmation, because God being God, he's going to confirm, you know? He actually loves it when you ask for confirmation. You have to test the spirits, right? And so I remember that night I said, okay, God, if this is you, right, and you want me to have this job, then you decide my salary for me. Literally my prayer, right? you decide my salary for me. And that was that. And I went to sleep. And the next day was the interviewing process at the location. And I remember I woke up. And as soon as I woke up, a specific number was given to me. Very, very specific. Very, very specific. Usually, you know, in management, they give you like just put it like this. That number is not a usual number when it comes to salaries. It was just too much of a specific number. And yeah, so I woke up, you know, he drops that number in my spirit, and I'm just like, okay. I didn't think anything of it, honestly. To be extremely honest, I even forgot about the prayer that I said last night. So just think about it this way. It's like I say the prayer, I go to sleep, I wake up. It's like that number is dropping in my spirit. And I'm like to me, it's just like, okay. And so I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready for the interview. Drops that number again in my spirit. And I'm like, So now I'm on my way to the establishment. And I'm on my way to the establishment. And he specifically tells me, he's like, they're going to offer you. And he says the number a third time. Ooh, I'm getting just like chills just thinking about it. God is so good. And I was like, okay. And I felt, you know, even though, I'm going to be quite honest, even though I didn't like the number, because I didn't. I was like, really? But I was at peace with it. And that's the thing about God, you know. Even if you don't understand it, you just have to learn to trust him. And I felt very much at peace with it. And I go and, you know, I go through the interviewing process. It was great. It was phenomenal. And I'm on my way back home, and I get a phone call. And it was the interviewing manager who I just finished talking to about an hour ago. And he says, Janiris. And he's like, where are you? Are you able to come back? I'm like, sure, I'm able to come back. And he's like, actually, let me just tell you this over the phone. We like you and we want to offer you. And he says the number. And I'm like, bruh, this is nothing but God. Nothing but God. And so I knew in my spirit, I was like, okay, confirmed, right? I would be disobedient if I say no. And so immediately I accepted the offer. I requested an offer letter to be sent over to my email, you know, and I signed off on it when I got home. And it was just a quick process. But I was thinking to myself, it's like, God, I don't know what you're doing. You know, I didn't like the number. Still, I felt at peace with it, you know. And anyways, long story short, guys, I had received several prophecies because you know, it got to the point where I kind of wanted to seek elsewhere. Even though I was working there, I wanted to seek elsewhere because I'll be honest, I just did not like the pay. And I was going to start seeking elsewhere, and I got a few prophetic messages from trusted sources, and this was confirmed. Like it was told to me by 3 different people and family members, right? Mind you, they had not like communicated with one another. That was like the mind-blowing part. And they would all tell me, Janiris, do not leave because your blessing is coming from there, right? And I was holding on by a string, y'all. I was holding on by a string because, you know, even though it was a great company, I felt like I was carrying a lot of the weight as a manager. It was a lot. And so you know, it was a lot of weight, and I didn't feel as though the pay matched the responsibilities that I really had to take on. And so it wasn't until later that I'm talking to my family members. I'm like, did you speak to so-and-so? Oh, okay, because so-and-so told me the same thing. And I'm like, okay, did so-and-so speak to, oh, okay, because you guys are all lining up right now. And I just had to trust that. I just had to trust the word that, you know, my blessing was going to come from there. When I tell y'all that God is good. So one night, in comes a couple, and I've already been introduced to this couple, and they're an older couple, and they're great. They're just fabulous. They come in, and they say to me, actually, they don't even say anything to me. I just go to greet them, right? I'm like, hey, how are you? You know, this, that, and the third, and we have our little small talk, and he says to me, he's like, how much are you making here? And I'm just taken aback by the question, like, whoa. And I tell him the amount. And then he says to me, are you looking? I'm like, yeah, I'm about to. And then he says, how much do you want to make? Tell him that amount. He had connections. Just put it like that. He had connections, and I put in my 2 weeks, and I went to work elsewhere where the pay was good. And so God's word came to pass. You know, if he says he's going to do something, if he says hang on, if he's, you know, whatever the case might be, listen to God always, because he's not going to lead you astray. Even when it doesn't make sense, just listen to God, because he's going to do what he said he's going to do. So, you know, trust God, like I said, even if it doesn't make sense, because his ways are higher than our ways, and he can see the bigger picture, whereas we can just see just a small portion of it. So thank you guys. God bless.